shoot. Fires from the top of the key and banks it home. The Liberty take a 2-point lead.
Welcome to Liberty FM, the podcast dedicated to all things New York Liberty. I'm Felicia, and I'm joined by my co-host and husband, Francois. This is episode 21, recapping Game 2 of the semifinals between the New York Liberty and Connecticut Sun. The Liberty got the win. Francois, how are we feeling about the performances in this game?
There's a sense of relief for this game because after the knockout blow in the first game, I really didn't know how the Liberty were going to show up. And obviously we knew that, they wanted to rectify that game one. But the way the Connecticut Sun were playing in this game made you doubt as to whether that was going to be possible. And it was a very emotional night. Sandy Brandello did mention that because on that very day, we found out that Breanna Stewart is the WNBA most valuable player of the 2023 season. And that created a lot of buzz, good and bad, a lot of tension as to who really deserved it. And it was very emotional for Stewie to get the trophy, all the accomplishments, all the efforts put into our crafts. And so it's hard because it's like you receive the trophy and you kind of have to deliver on that day because people are going to question, look at everything you do, oh, you see, she's not scoring points, that's your MVP. When you're down by one game in the playoff, it's tough. And we knew that Connecticut, on the other hand, was going to prove and play for Alyssa Thomas, who, sadly, after a historic season, didn't get the trophy. It's hard, she was so deserving, just as Asia was deserving, and so we knew that they were going to play for her. So there was a lot of emotions and a lot of, intensity and tension in this game. But I'm so relieved that the Liberty got the win, and it's a 1-1 situation now. We start from scratch almost again, and I cannot wait to see how things are going to go in Connecticut. But yeah, definitely a sense of relief.
Yeah, we obviously as Liberty fans wanted Stewie to win, but, we spoke about this before that all three are deserving. Asia, Alyssa, and Breanna Stewart. We knew it was going to be a tight race, and you knew it was going to come down to just mere votes between them because they all had just huge seasons that impacted their teams and really helped to lead their teams to so many victories. And so, you knew this was going to be tough. And yeah, based on the voting and also, let me just say, whoever voted Asia for fourth place.
I knew it.
Yes, I'm not an Aces fan, but Asia for fourth place, you're wildin'. That's crazy. But, but other than that, that's a side note. But other than that, you knew this was going to be tight. Congratulations to Stewie on this impeccable achievement. But yeah, you got to lock in. And, as we've talked about it, we've noticed that the points aren't really going up for Stewie right now, but she is impacting the game in other ways, and we'll get into that as the game goes on. But, she's impacting with blocks, assists, and, defense. She's doing all the other things if the shots aren't going down. She's not, getting into herself and not doing the other things. She's helping her teammates, and they are rising to the occasion to get the buckets and lead the team to a victory. And that's what happened tonight. Like I said in the previous game, we needed Betnijah and we needed Sabrina, and those are the people who stepped up. Also, Jonquel Jones started off the game tremendously. I thought she was going to get a double before the first half ended, but everyone stepped up tonight, and that is what the Liberty needs in order to win. For the Connecticut side, it's tough for AT, and I don't know if that affected her game. You know, she didn't do that great tonight. Bonner did okay, but the top player of the night all around was Tiffany Hayes. And so, yeah, you have a team that's going to be tough defensively and offensively, but they just didn't have everyone scoring tonight. And that was also a huge advantage for the Liberty, and also a huge advantage for the Liberty was actually getting Rebecca Allen in foul trouble, which helped in a great way.
All right. Well, you know, there's a lot to unpack here. So let's break it down quarter by quarter. And like you said, like first quarter, Jonquel Jones was dominating. I mean, she had a couple of post moves that were beautiful. There was that basket where she like kind of twisted, like she was playing with a pivot foot and like, you know, almost like dancing and stuff. And Bonner could not stop her. She got the N1. And she just continued on what she had done in the first half of the first game. Now, what was surprising at the end of game one was that it was the first loss for the Liberty when Jonquel Jones had a double-double. So far, they were 13-0 or something like that. So, you know, it wasn't like, you know, a small accomplishment that Connecticut did in that first game. So I was happy that, you know, Jonquel Jones continued to dominate in that first quarter. But like you said, Tiffany Hayes was the X factor for Connecticut in that game. What a performance. I mean, she started with 12 points in that first quarter. She has probably one of the quickest first step in the game. And obviously, when you have Alyssa Thomas setting a screen for you, that is going to tremendously help you to get into the basket. And so I felt like, you know, even though we were dominating with Jonquel, we didn't really take like a big lead because, you know, Tiffany Hayes was on fire. And, you know, at that moment, you know, when the Connecticut Sun was staying afloat, that's when they decided to go on a little run, an 11-0 run. And with some players that were like, okay, so what do you think of, like, you know, Bonner? That's her bread and butter when she has that free and she kind of throws herself. I mean, it's smart. Like, she tries the very best to sell the foul. And usually, like, you know, players either fall for it or the ref are falling for it. But, you know, she was fairly quiet, like, so far in the game compared to game one. But then she had that play where she got fouled at the three-point line. So that gave 3 free throws for Connecticut. She made the first 2, missed the third one, and then Adoda had the tip on the play, which kind of gave them like a 4-point play. And you felt like, you know, they ended that first quarter on the 11-0 run, and you felt like, oh man, like the Liberty started that game so well, and it's almost like Connecticut kind of canceled it out, and it's like, that's not really good for the momentum. So how did you feel like when like Connecticut went back into the game so quickly?
I wasn't surprised because I think this is a game of runs. You know, one team hits first, the other team comes back, and being technically the 2 and 3 seed in the league, you always knew this was going to be a tough matchup. This was going to be these games were not, I wasn't expecting any sort of blowouts or anything like that. These games were going to come down to the wire, and you're going to have these runs going back and forth. And the way Connecticut played in the first game and how strong they were, you know, both offense and defense, I expected the same energy. You know, it was just more that the Liberty needed to match that energy, and they needed to do better. And they need to do better defensively. So I just thought, you know, I initially thought like, man, we can't get into a deep hole with Connecticut. We need to stop some of this bleeding. We need to get some stops. They need to get back on defense and really focus in. I think, you know, they really tried to focus in more maybe on, you know, Alyssa Thomas and Bonner, and I felt like Tiffany Hayes got to run the floor pretty easily initially. You know, I think it was just too easy. Maybe they didn't expect her to do what she was doing that night, but I just think that they have to tighten some things up, and hopefully they'll do that, you know, in the next game. But for this one, it was the first quarter, you know, going in, everybody's going to take their punches, and they really have to just settle in and keep their poise. And if they can do that, And if they can also run with pace, talking about the Liberty, they can get back in the game.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that was a little worrying and also helped Connecticut getting back into this game was the turnovers. I think the Connecticut Sun's defense has been suffocating for the Liberty. They put a lot of pressure on the guards. And obviously their tactic with Sabrina is to double team her as quickly as possible. And as a result, that caused her to, turn the ball over a few times, Sloot as well, putting a lot of pressure on Stewie. Yeah. And so, I was kind of worried about those aspects of the game that were very similar to game one. And we got to talk about Stewie. I mean, obviously it was an emotional game for her. And Alyssa Thomas has been amazing defensively on Stewie. Even though I have to say that, for someone who's MVP or one of the top players in the league, when you usually tend to get more favorable calls, she didn't get many calls as Stewie because it was always on the verge of like the, limit in terms of physicality. They were putting a lot of pressure on her, but it took a long time for Stewie to get her first points. She got her first 2 points after 14 minutes of play, and that wasn't even a field goal. That was at the free throw line. What did you make of Connecticut's defense on Stewie, and moving forward, what you think Stewie should do?
It's stifling, but, she's still doing all the little things to get the ball to her teammates and where they can be the ones. And then, I think you may want to, double team Stewie, you may want to double team Sabrina. But like you saw in this game, when they would do that, she would kick it out to maybe Sloot, even, JJ or Betnijah. In particular, Betnijah and Courtney Vandersloot, I would say when they would get the ball, even for Sloot, she was scoring some points tonight herself. Yeah. And I think, they were the X factors as well for the Liberty down the stretch. If Stewie couldn't get the ball in there, she's passing it out. She's trying to get it to one of her teammates, which is either Sloot, Betnijah. If Sabrina can't get it, and that is what worked. When everyone is contributing to the score, that just helps your team all around. And, and on the other side for Connecticut, really, it was just Tiffany Hayes. Yeah. And Bonner obviously came up in there too, but really it was Tiffany Hayes. AT, she ended up with 10 points in the game, but she missed a lot of shots just like Stewie. Yeah. And so I think, what can Stewie do? They're constantly double teaming her. So I think, she's just going to have to be the decoy until she can get enough space to really get her shot. And she did get some good shots off at times. Because now when you see Betnijah with the hot hand or Sloot is taking off to the basket and she's still quick with her moves. So it's, when you can cause confusion for Connecticut, if you can cause confusion on their defense, it'll likely get her open. For Sabrina, I will say. Well,
let's talk about Sabrina, actually, because you called it last time around. I think it was the previous podcast when you said, like, you need someone, with some mid-range shots. And we got to give props to Sabrina because she's targeted, because Connecticut know that Sabrina is a threat, especially at the three-point line. So they put a lot of pressure on her. Mm-hmm. But you got to give her props because she adjusted in this game. She was able to read the defense and attack the basket a countless number of times, which caused Baker Allen to get a few fouls. And, knowing that Baker Allen was the player of the game or game one, that helped the Liberty tremendously. Mm-hmm. But she was also able to have a couple of floaters that were really beautiful to see. And, if she could add that to that game consistently and not just rely on the threes, she's going to be, she's already a threat, but she's going to be, quite tough to manage.
I think in the playoffs, she's going to have to go to that. She's going to get looks at three, at times, but she's going to need to go to that. You're not, they know you're a 3-point threat, so a lot of times they're going to defend you high. And also watching her go to the basket, it's impressive because you see it's coming. You see the development in that. And she's knocking down those shots. So it's like just seeing it more and more. And, you know, hopefully it'll just keep coming throughout the playoffs and down the line. But, yeah, she did well, you know, just seeing those moves. And I was like, yes, finally. You know, we saw it a bit through the regular season.
Yeah.
But now this is when you need to, because they're cutting you off at the 3-point line and you can't just be stuck. Because then what they do, the double team comes, they trap her, they try to run her off the line. And I wish also her and JJ, especially when JJ tries to set a screen for her, or when they switch, and you see she needs to maybe be quicker on reading what the defense is about to do. Because those times, someone is wide open at that moment. And, you know, it's hard when you got two tall people on you. So it's not easy. It's easier said than done. But hopefully, you know, down the line, they can sharpen that where it's like you see the second person coming, pass it to JJ right away, because now she's open. She's wide open, or whomever is passing it to Sabrina. The likelihood is they're going to be open because the double team's about to come. So overall, though, she did well.
Yeah. So at halftime, the Connecticut Sun are up by 4, 42-38. And considering that Stewie in that first half only had 4 points, all of those 4 points were at the free throw line. She was 0 for 5, you know, in terms of field goals. So you gotta feel slightly good about it, considering that your MVP only scored 4 points. But I would say in the second half, before I talk about Betnijah, Laney, and Courtney Vandersloot, what was one of the keys to that game, and something that I was definitely not expecting, was the zone defense by the Liberty. They started a little bit in that second quarter and did more of that in the second half. And that was pretty much the key to the game. The number of times that they were able to either steal the ball, force Connecticut to take a tough shot and get those boards. Another battle that the Liberty won compared to game 1. That was crucial to me. What did you make of that adjustment? Because, you know, in terms of individual defense, the Liberty were struggling to contain some of the star players from the Connecticut Sun. So what did you make of that switch in terms of defense strategy?
That, I think, really saved the game for them. And it helped them to win this game. You know, it really set, you know, that defense, the zone defense, it helped to get, you know, steals and missed shots and, you know, getting Connecticut not in their rhythm, you know, getting them out of rhythm and forcing shots and missing shots. And so it was huge for the Liberty. And just that, and just seeing them come out in the third quarter in this game so effective and so strong. Then game 1, where the third quarter they just seemed lethargic. In game 1, you were like, oh, this is not going to end well. But in this one, I liked what I saw. They came out strong. Yeah, they went with the zone defense. It worked. You know, obviously you can't do that the entire time, but it worked for them in this game, and hopefully that's something they, like Sabrina even said in the post game, that's something they can have in their back pocket when they need to go to it. Because there's still some things they got to tweak, some things they got to stay firm with for the next game, and so you know you have that in your back pocket, which can disrupt Connecticut. But again, everybody's going to make their adjustments, so we'll see. But I will say the highlight of the game.
Oh, yeah.
In the third quarter.
I think I know what you're talking about.
That block. Woo! By Stewie.
Oh, yeah.
On Nelson Dodota. Oh, my gosh. To see it live. I mean, even seeing even when we watch it back, it's intense. But from the angle we saw it from, man, it just looked so violent. Like Nelson Dodota just crumbled underneath Stewie. And you were just like, oh my gosh. But that was also a pivotal point in that game, because even though she might not have been getting points on the board that much, these are the types of plays where she was effective. 5 blocks, the most in a playoff game in WNBA history.
I think it was. I think it was the the Liberty's records in the WNBA playoff. I'm not sure if it's the records.
Oh, okay, my bad.
Yeah.
But still, 5 blocks in one game, that is impressive. And so, I think that for me was the highlight of the game, and also just seeing them gel and really fight and grind this one out. We, as I said before, this was not going to be a blowout because both teams, I feel like in a way they are equally matched, and it was always going to be a grind. So I'm just glad the Liberty came out strong and aggressive in the second half.
Yeah, I think what was very interesting after the game, Jonquel Jones said that, they had to watch the game one as a team. And it was an eye-opener. They felt embarrassed by the performance they had and how stagnant they were on offense and the lack of intensity on defense. So I think it was good for them to watch it together, talk about it, and realize what they needed to change. And Sabrina said that, the fact that, it's not like the Liberty were playing zone defense all throughout the season, every single game.
Yeah.
That was something that they had not done in quite some time. So that shows, the communication, the drive of that team to do anything they can to succeed. And that block from Stewie came because they put a lot of pressure on zone defense. Now, Connecticut on that play was able to move the ball and transition the ball quickly, which obviously at some point Betnijah had to come and help on one side, which left Ododa on her own in the paint. But when you have a player like Stewie, that is so quick and, wingspan, she has the length, she can jump, she's quite physical. That block, I remember I was, on my seat, I jumped.
Everybody jumped.
The whole stadium got up. It was almost like a roar. It was insane. And
that was a nasty block.
Yeah, it's almost like dunking on someone, but sometimes blocks are just as exciting, if not more sometimes than dunks or crossovers. So it was awesome. And Sandy Brandillo mentioned it after the game, and even Jonquel, that's what an MVP is. Even when things are not going their way offensively or in terms of field goal percentage, you find other ways to be effective and contribute to the game. And obviously, she is also the vocal leader of that team. So she's going to do everything she can to get the win no matter what. And that block energized the crowd and the team overall. And it was great. And so at that moment, the Liberty had a little momentum in the game, and they started to play with more pace. Having a couple of fast breaks. Stewie even had the first field goal in that quarter. Betnijah, Sabrina were cooking, and I think at some point we had a 10-point lead. And the Connecticut Sun had to take a timeout, and you felt confident. The crowd was really pumped. You felt that's the moment where the Liberty are just gonna take a bigger cushion and just have a easy win in the second half. But then you realize for the last Connecticut took a timeout. There was about 4 minutes and 15 seconds left in that third quarter. The Liberty did not score a single basket after that in that quarter. And slowly but surely, the Connecticut Sun came back, and by the end of the third quarter, they're only down by 2, and it's oh man, we have to start everything from scratch again. I was oh man, this team just would not quit, is it?
It's playoffs.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to lose. At this point, you want to win. You want to win. You want to take 1, if not 2, from your opponent's home court. And they're not going to give up. It's playoffs. Every game counts, and every game lost, you're just closer to going home. So, it's important that's why this is a grudge match, and it's important that both teams stay composed. But I will say one of the things that I noticed for Connecticut, and as we were talking about this, we said it's similar to what you see sometimes with Dallas, with the Dallas Wings, is that yes, we've even complained about the refs in the WNBA and how, some stuff you wonder, you're on the court and we're seeing it from whether television or we're seeing it from way up that this didn't happen, and the calls sometimes just look like phantom calls. But I'm sure for the players, it's even worse for them. We might feel some stuff, but for them, I'm sure it's especially charged, and they got to keep composure with all of that. They can't sit there and complain every 5 seconds. And one of the things I will say is that there were a couple of scores where, there was one in particular where, Tiffany Hayes was going up and I guess she thought Jonquel would foul her and Jonquel kind of stopped to let her go. And she sort of went out of control and ended up flying almost into one of the cameramen. And for somebody who has a bum knee and playing on it, and obviously she's tough, she's aggressive, but to do that, there were just some plays where you're throwing yourself and it's to your own detriment. Yeah. It's like some of these plays, like, what are you doing? Like, are you trying to get a call? Or are you trying to just injure yourself even more? And it was just wild because at that point you saw every time a foul's called, complaint after complaint, or there's just constant talking. And I was like, but it's a foul. Like,
yeah, when you watch, like, when we were at the Barclays and you see the replays on the Jumbotron, and then we rewatch the game after that on TV, like, a lot of the calls they were complaining about
were accurate.
Were justified.
I'm not saying every call. There were some crazy calls too, but most of the foul calls they were making, they were accurate.
Yeah, I definitely felt like it got them out of the game a little bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, you could also give credits to the Liberty for frustrating Connecticut. But I think, the level of complaining and frustration definitely play against them. So it would be interesting to see how they're going to rectify that at home. I mean, if they continue that way and it distracts them, I mean, good for us, we're Liberty fans, but it definitely takes away, from the game when you have, players that complain all the time. Like, at some point, like, you're hoopers, let's sort it out on the court. I didn't feel like for this time around the ref were giving too much of an advantage to Liberty, because there were some calls as well
that were
nonsensical on the other side. So I felt like it was pretty even. But yeah, it is what it is. I felt like the game was more physical than what we normally see during the regular season. So I do feel like they had more freedom that they would normally get in the regular season. But fourth quarter, things are still pretty tight, but we got to give props, I said that earlier, to Betnijah, Laney and Courtney Vandersloot. Betnijah Laney only had 3 points in the first game. Now, there were games in the regular season, especially the first part, where she wasn't necessarily scoring a lot of points. She was trying to figure out a role in that new team. She went from, most improved player with the Atlanta Dream to being the star player of the Liberty with a very young team and a lot of rookies. Second season, battling injuries and coming back at the perfect time. But I still felt like, when it came to the playoff in the series against Chicago, she wasn't 100%. But now it's like you have like Jonquel Jones, Breanna Stewart, Courtney Vandersloot. Like, what is going to be her role in that team? Is it more defensive, offensive? It took a bit of time, but wow, like, I don't think we would be where we are right now if it wasn't for Betnijah this season. And that game, she show out, and when the Liberty needed buckets, there's a T-shirt that said Betnijah is bucket. Yep. And she was. I mean, she was 5 for 7 at the 3-point line, and it was always at times where the Liberty really needed some points, because even though I felt like the Liberty were moving the ball a little bit better in this game, they were still at times a little like stagnant, and she would bail us out like at the best of time. And Vandersloot as well, like, some people were saying like, oh, if there's one player you want to leave alone to take shots, it's her. But Vandersloot in the playoff, it's a different beast. It's a different player. she's still that playmaker, but I feel like she has more poise and, more focus on that shot. And she also, was on fire from the 3-point line in the mid-range.
Yeah, she was 3 for 4 at the 3-point line. And Vandersloot is quick. Mm-hmm. And the thing, with Courtney Vandersloot is just, you're not always sure what she's about to do, because when she takes off, it's almost they usually don't expect it. Like, you think she's going to pass it, she's going to give it to Stewie, she's going to pass it to Sab or, anybody. And sometimes she just takes off. She sees that lane and she's gone, and you're not going to catch up to her. And so, I think that helped them because she was a little unpredictable tonight. That she wasn't just the point guard passing, she's shooting, and for her and Betnijah, Betnijah ended up with 20 points. Sloot had 19 points. Sab overall had the high score. She had 21 points. But, yeah, in the fourth quarter, it was all about Laney and Vandersloot, and they rose to the occasion, and they did what they needed to do to get the Liberty the win.
Yeah, that's the beauty with this team this year, is that there's so many weapons that, if a lot of them click, it's going to be hard to figure out, how to stop this team, because obviously they started to focus more on JJ in the second half because she was scoring so many points in the first part of the game. They started double teaming her. So what did she do? There were times there was that beautiful, pass across the court for Betnijah that, got the free. And then sometimes Sloot, she started making shots. So then it's oh, it's not. We got to focus on her. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, she passed the ball to Stewie, who scored first free in the game. And so it's really hard on the team to be man, where do we cut the head of the snake here? Because there's so many poisons. Mm-hmm. And so I felt even though Connecticut was not giving up, and, you had Tiffany Hayes still wouldn't give up, and she scored 30 points in that game. I was definitely not expecting that many points from her. At some point it was a little too much for Connecticut, and they got the win. We're happy that it's 1-1. Overall it was only 84-77. But we'll take that win. It doesn't matter, 1 point, 20 points, 30 points. A win is a win, and as Sabrina said, they're glad that they got the win, and that's all that matters. And so now we're gonna go to Connecticut for 2 games. Mm-hmm. Friday at 7:30, and then Sunday at 3 p.m. How do you see this battle in Connecticut? Because that's going to be very, very interesting. I mean, Connecticut is very strong at home. Mm-hmm. We beat them twice in the regular season. We know that doesn't necessarily mean much. But how do you see this series, back in CT?
The Liberty can take it if they tighten up defense. Defense will win you games. And the boards, too, rebounding. If JJ can get those rebounds for you, and if you tighten up your defense, whether it's zone or man-to-man, you can win the game. It's a matter of them staying locked in.
Yeah. That's
going to be the key. Whether, Connecticut's still going to probably double-team Stewie, so you kind of need to make her the decoy if that's the case. And maybe her and Sab kind of are decoys until they can find an opening, but you're still going to need Betnijah, you're still going to need Vandersloot, you're going to need JJ. Those are your 3, because that the main targets on your team are Stewie and Sab. So Stewie first, obviously. So I think that if they can tighten those things up, they can get the win, they can grind this out. Again, I feel like it'll still be a nail biter. I can't see it being any sort of blowout win. I could see either team winning by 5 to 7 points. Hopefully it's the Liberty, because I do think they can do this. It's just a matter of staying poised, staying composed, and sticking to the game plan and communicating effectively on the court, and also protecting the ball. What will kill them every time, and what they have done throughout the season, and what has killed them to allow other teams to get back in the game, is turnovers. You had 14 turnovers this game. Yes, you won, but that's just way too many turnovers. You need to get that. You need to keep that down in the single digits as best you can, and that will help as well. That will be huge for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, it's the key is going to be, the guards of Connecticut, because, we saw in the first game you had, Becca Allen, that was on fire. You had Dewana Bonner, then Tiffany Hayes in the second game. So that's going to be important to not only be able to control that, but also making sure that if on defense, if Connecticut is putting a lot of pressure on the guards of the Liberty, that they're able to read the defense and figure out different options like they did in Game 2. I really hope that, they continue to play Liberty basketball, which is ball movement, pace. When they were stagnant in Game 1 and even to some degree against the Mystics in the first round, we know that it's not going to be good. If you hold on to the ball for too long and then start attacking in the last 5 or 6 seconds, that plays in Connecticut's favor. So I really hope that, they bring pace and variety in the offense, being able to read the defense. And I really like the zone defense, to be honest. Like, that was definitely a nice surprise. And I hope that they continue to mix it up. Like Sabrina said, like, they don't want to necessarily rely overly on just the zone defense, because Connecticut will make the adjustments. But to be able to offer something different, because, Connecticut has shown that, they can do some damage to the Liberty's defense individually. And when you have Alyssa Thomas setting some good screens or people cutting to the basket, it's really hard. So I hope that they can mix it up. And in terms of the offense as well, I mean, it feels like we need at least 2 or 3 players to have big games to get the win. So, we don't know who's going to be hot in that game, but if you see that someone is struggling or that Connecticut is able to, like, locked in one of their players, then find another player to get going. It looks like Sandy is going to rely heavily on her starting lineup. So far the bench players haven't played that much. Probably Katie, Kayla Foran is the player from the bench with the most minutes. But even someone like Marine Johannes, hasn't played that much so far. Dawson as well, played a couple of minutes. Nyara Saboli only played like the last minute of, the game 1. And Justin Willoughby hasn't played yet. So the starting lineup is going to be used quite a lot. And the same thing goes with Connecticut. We saw Bonner and Alyssa Thomas play 40 minutes in the last game. So, they know each other very well now. So it's going to be exciting to see the adjustments and how both teams are going to respond. We will be in Mahan for Game 3 to, watch that game on the big screen at a watching party organized by the Liberty. So we hope that the fans will show up just to recreate the Barclays atmosphere in a different place, obviously, since we won't be able to be in Connecticut. But yeah, let's just hope that it's a great show and then it turns in our favor. And so that's about it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We'll try to record the next episode the day after Game 3. But as we always say, Felicia, let's go Liberty!